Hello, magical human, and welcome back to the podcast. As you can tell, I'm freezing if you're watching the video. It is the fourth day of winter here, and this beanie has pretty much lived on my head the entire time. A lot of heat escapes through the crown of your head, so if you can put a cap on it, really helps. So if anyone else is struggling with the winter, get yourself a beanie and a scarf, and then you should be okay. Socks as well, but yeah, I know a lot of you are going into summer right now, so it's so strange, isn't it? It's so strange that some of us are freezing and others are, think it's so hot right now. It's just such a funny thing to be able to connect with humans across the globe and everyone's experiencing something different. And yet we're all the same. It's pretty cool. This episode today, I'm going to talk about prana. So last Sunday, the Sunday just passed, I hosted a workshop about prana. This was an in-person workshop in Blayney, New South Wales, which was really beautiful. And it was a really small, intimate gathering to talk about prana and what prana actually is, because a lot of the time people, you either haven't heard about prana, or if you have dabbled with yoga or energy work, you may have come across the word prana and you probably got the description life force energy and you rolled with that. And that's where most people stop when it comes to learning about what prana is. And this is a real disservice to yourself and to your body and just to everything. So it's really important that we really dive into these teachings and make sure that we're actually viewing them for what they're meant to be. And we're not just taking little pieces and running with that, because that's where mistakes happen. That's where misunderstandings happen. That's where we misunderstand or misuse what we're looking at. And most people, especially for those of us who are brand new, right? You've heard of the word pranayama. I did a 8 limbs of yoga series and I hit on pranayama, which is often seen as breath technique. So people often think that to work with prana, they need to do pranayama, as in a breath technique. So, if they get to this point, they're probably going to practice, your nadi shodhana pranayama, alternate nostril breath. People will do a breath like that and they'll say they've done their prana work for the day, their pranayama. But the reality is breath techniques are not prana. That's not the situation. You can use the breath to direct and connect with prana, but for most of us, we're not breathing in a way that is called a pranic breath. We're not doing it correctly. So for example, a breath that you might be breathing right now, or a common breath and very stressed breath. It sounds loud, it's weird pace, it's not very even. It's short, sharp, shallow, and kind of hangs out very high chested. And you might even find yourself holding the breath. So these random moments where you're not breathing at all. That is not a prana breath. Okay. That is, you're doing the bare minimum to stay alive. Basically, your body is, it's in fight or flight response. We're stressed out and the breath is showing it. The mind is all over the place. You're disconnected from the body and your breath is becoming an incredibly poor quality, basically bare minimum. It's keeping you alive. That's about it. You're alive, but you're not thriving. The difference between alive and thriving is the prana usage. Okay. So the word prana, it doesn't actually mean life force energy. It's a very quick way to look at it and go, yep, that makes sense. But the word prana is made of 2 Sanskrit words. Okay. The first one is pra. Now I'm going to say this with an Australian accent because I'm Australian. I'm trying. I'm also just going to be who I am. Okay. So pra means first. The first. Ana means the smallest amount of energy, the smallest measurement of energy. So if you put those together, it is the first smallest amount of energy that keeps you alive. Right? So that's the actual translation of prana. It's a small, very subtle energy. Okay, so we can't go into a pranayama practice and breathe crazy breaths and, lion's breath, and we're sticking out our tongue and everyone's like going crazy. That we can't say that that's exactly connecting with prana, because that's an exaggerated breath. Okay, so prana is the smallest amount of energy, the smallest unit of energy. And look at our life. We don't have anything in small energy, right? Look at us. We are constantly bombarded with noise. Go, 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 loud, flashing signs, big thoughts, big actions all the time. And all of that requires a lot of energy. There's no way that is a small, subtle unit of energy. Working with prana is when you step into the subtle realm. So most of us are obsessed with the loud, the obvious, pains, pleasures, the things in the life that we see, the big things, the things that are very loud and noisy. Prana is part of the area of subtle energies that you're not going to notice. They're not going to scream at you unless you go in and actually pay attention to them. Right? And so many of us miss these. The first signs of injury and illness start in the subtle realm. And when they're in the subtle realm in prana, we're actually able to redirect and change and manipulate that energy and not allow it to accelerate into the big, loud pains and diseases that they turn into. Okay, so they're actually in the small realm. The subtle sensations also hold a lot of pleasure. And yet, because we're also tuned into the loud, most of us won't even notice the subtle. It might be the sun rays on the face, the wind on the face. It could be any of those things. Most of us don't even notice these things. We're too up in the busyness of it all. So, what do we want to do with this prana? Okay, we know that, just doing pranayama, a breath technique, is not tapping in to prana itself. Okay, it has to be a very specific type of breath, and most of us don't even focus on smoothing out the kinks in the breath. Like when you think about your normal breath is fast-paced, fast, shallow, all those things that it is. Most of us take that breath and then go straight into a breath technique. And we do the breath technique for like 4 rounds and then that's it. That's no way you're tapping into prana at that point, right? So we actually have to spend time before we do breath techniques to actually smooth out the breath, to actually just practice a breath that is a pranic breath. So the smooth, continuous, gentle, easy breath, the quiet breath, that is a prana breath. From there, you could take that into a breath technique for sure, for a specific purpose. But actually just sitting with a pranic breath is so powerful. We did this in our workshop and the response was incredible. And it was nothing like I teach pranayama all the time, the breath techniques. And you don't get the same response from people as you do when you just work on the pranic breath or you take that into a pranayama. And for many of us, if you're a teacher, if you're a student of yoga, or if you're just listening to this for fun, right? If you're going to a yoga class or you sit down to do your yoga practice, most of us are just thinking, do this technique, this asana, this, do this, do this, this. But we've got to step back sometimes and make room for spaciousness and the subtle energies to become known because most of us are living a very loud, busy, active life. So there's no way we're going to go from that and then just tap in to the peaceful tranquility of prana. It's not going to happen. You've got to take time to practice that kind of thing. So on my online studio, Yoga with Madison, I just dropped a 25-minute meditation that is exactly what we did in the workshop in working in that pranic breath and then bringing that awareness and prana around the whole body and how to direct it to certain parts of the body. Very powerful, very cool practice. Feel free to go and jump in there. The link is below. Go and check it out. It's a monthly subscription. Jump in and out all you want, but it is worth it to do that prana exercise alone. So go and check that out. So there's another word I want to talk to you about, which many of us have not heard of, and is the word prani. Prani sounds a lot like prana, doesn't it? Prani means a being of prana. Isn't that cool? So you are a prani. A human being is a prani, a being of prana. An animal, a tree, everything that's a being of prana. A physical being of energy is prani. So if we think about you being a prani, you're a being of prana. Isn't it interesting we find it so hard to tap into prana when that is literally what you are a being of? But some people find it hard to tap into their breath, to tap into their heartbeat, to tap into their senses. And these are all things that you would align with the human experience. No one's going to say, oh, senses, you can't, no one's sensing anything. Or, oh, heartbeats, that's not a thing. Or the breath, that's like not a thing. No one's going to argue with that. They know that you breathe. They know there's a heartbeat. They know there's a senses, but many people can't tap into them because that's how busy they are. That's how busy their body is. That's how busy their mind is. So they can't actually just tap back into the physical sensations. So let alone tapping into prana, which is a subtler sensation. So it takes a lot of practice. And where this kind of relates in, I did an episode a few weeks ago about voting, about how to vote for things with your energy. And it was very much about prana. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Everything is prana. Everything before this moment was prana. Everything that you can see, touch, feel, everything that's happening, the sensations you have in your body, the weather that's happening outside, the physical objects in your life, none of that would be possible without prana. And the future, no matter what kind of future it is all prana. Prana is not good or evil, good or bad. It's just energy. And energy can be manipulated and used to direct an intention, to create something. And energy going in a particular direction for long enough will create physical manifestations, which is where the basis of manifestation comes from, right? If you stare at something, you give it your attention, you give it your affirmation, you work towards that thing, there's a very good chance you're going to draw that into your life. Except often people get confused. So say if a lot of people want to manifest $1 million, right? So if we stare at $1 million, we focus on $1 million, that $1 million is mine, that $1 million wants to come to me, you're really directing prana at it. A lot of us are creating space in between us and that thing just by simply noticing that that is over there, right? The $1 million is over there and I'm over here. And you're actually highlighting that space, that gap in between you, which is what you're actually putting the prana into. So that's where people go wrong with manifestation, right? And that doesn't mean that, if you direct prana correctly, you're going to get the $1 million, because at the end of the day, everything is energy. We are all prani. It's not just you, right? It's not just you. We are all prani, and we all have our own set of intentions and directions of energy. And then you've got the universe and the earth herself, who is literally directing prana as well. So what you're doing may not necessarily go bang on every time, because sometimes the world has different intentions. There are different plans, things are going in different directions. So manifestation's a funny one. I always just think, control what you can control. And there's a lot of anything outside of you is very difficult to control. You can do the best you can, and it does work, definitely. But the only thing you can really control with prana is on the inside of you and in your aura space. So you can direct prana in this zone. And when you do that, you create a more positive vibration. You create a peaceful, a loving vibration. And that is going to draw anything to you, right? If it's meant to be for the world. So the place we want to focus on this energy is on the inside, but everyone's just obsessed with the big stuff, right? I want to manifest $1 million. Have never heard about prana, never tried to tap into prana, never tried to sense the prana of another being or another plant, and just so focused on wanting $1 million in your bank account. Does that sound like something that's just going to magically manifest? Of course not. You're out of touch with prana. You're disconnected. It's, you've got you up here and everyone else is kind of down here somewhere, right? So working with prana is working with subtle energy. And prana is responsible for every sensation, everything that happens in the body. There is nothing that exists without prana. The moment prana leaves your body, this small, subtle, the tiniest amount of energy that means that you're alive, the moment that smallest unit of energy leaves your body, that's when you die. So you can tell this is quite deep. This is not just about breath practices. There are 12 different types of prana, 5 main. There is so much depth here and learning to move prana in the body. And pranayama can be used for that, for sure. But for the 8 limbs of yoga, for those of you who have been following along with the yoga series, I haven't finished it yet, but it's coming, right? After pranayama, we're stepping into pratyahara, which is withdrawal of the senses. Now, unless you tap into prana properly in your pranayama practice, which, you can do breath techniques all you want, it doesn't make it pranayama. It doesn't make it pranayama. It becomes pranayama when it's a breath that is felt with prana, when it is connected with prana. And that's for most of us in a yoga class, standardly, we're not connected with prana. It's just a simple breath work. This is what separates breath work to pranayama. There are breath work practitioners, right? Nothing wrong with breath work. It's great. It does amazing things for the nervous system. It's really good for the brain, good for the body. Yes, yes, yes. But yoga is not about breath work. We have breath techniques, yes, as tools to help you experience pranayama. And not all breath work becomes pranayama. So that's the difference. People often think that, pranayama is breath work is pranayama, but breath work is like a modern, non-yoga-y pranayama. And that's not the case. They're actually two different things. Pranayama is a rise in consciousness, is a rise in connection, is a rise in awareness. And you're not necessarily going to get that from a normal breath work practice. Is it impossible? No. But we actually have to practice feeling prana first before we're able to transform a simple breath technique, which, yes, has other benefits, but they're designed to be transformed into pranayama. And that happens inside of you with your connection with energy. And how do we actually get to that point where we can feel the energy? We're up at like the fifth and sixth limb of yoga here. Sorry, we're up at the fourth and fifth limb of yoga here. We're at yama, niyama, so many lifestyle practices, asana. These other things are there to help you tap into the connection with the energy. Then you start working with breath. Hopefully that becomes pranayama. For most of us, it won't until we practice feeling prana, which isn't hard. You are a prani. You are a being of prana. It's literally tapping into who you are. It's not hard. But for many of us, it takes practice because we're so focused on being outside, being busy, being whatever. So if you, by some miracle, tap into pranayama, there will then be a natural urge for pratyahara. And when people move from in the 8 limbs of yoga, the yamas make sense. Okay, cool. Truth telling, non-harming, got it. Niyama, yep. Self-study, cleanliness, all makes sense. Yep, can do that. Asana, postures, yep. Awesome, cool. Pranayama, breath work. People start to lose clarity here. And this is why, what I'm explaining in this episode, people start to lose clarity. They're like, okay, do some breath work. Got it. And then they go, pratyahara, withdraw your senses. And that's where people start to go wide-eyed, like, what? Withdraw my senses? What do you mean? And then we move from that to dharana, concentration, to that which will lead you to a state of meditation and bliss. So those final steps don't really make, they make sense, but how? That's often what I get from people that, but how? Because the first few steps is like, yep, makes sense. And then it starts to go to what? Because that's where most of us can get to. If you haven't tapped into prana properly, tapping into pratyahara is going to be very difficult for you. Because when you tap into pranayama, which is what we did at the workshop on Sunday, everyone was really tapped into this sense of smooth breath. And I had one girl say she didn't want to come back. She just wanted to do that. That's all she wanted to do was just sit there. She didn't want to move. She didn't want to come back to the room. She didn't want to come back to talking or back to her life. She just wanted to do that. That's how it feels when you tap into prana. You don't want to leave that sensation. There's a natural urge to withdraw your senses. So she was actually tapping into pratyahara. She didn't want to come back. When I was saying, wiggle your fingers and toes, come back to this space, she was going, no, I don't want to. That's how it should feel. That's how it should feel at the end of a yoga class. But most people bounce out of their breath work or their shavasana or their meditation and go, yay, that was so fun. Oh my goodness, let's go get juice and let's go straight back to that. You didn't tap into it. Because when you hit prana properly, there's an urge for pratyahara. You step into it with such ease. And that might sound so easy to say. So when you say, but how do I withdraw my senses? You don't withdraw your senses. There's no step-by-step instruction. It happens naturally. It's something that comes in the right condition. Naturally, there is an urge to withdraw. And from that urge, there is an urge to just be, to concentrate, to breathe, to observe the present moment for what it is without sensing anything, without labeling anything. There's just natural urge just to watch. From that natural urge comes dhyana, a state of meditation. And this is the state that people get in when they can sit there for hours and they feel like only 5 minutes have passed. These are the deeper levels of yoga, and very few people journey beyond asana. They might start doing some breath techniques. They might sit for a 5-minute meditation, but their minds are blah, 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 the whole time because they've missed pranayama, they've missed pratyahara, making dharana, concentration, very difficult. And then you become one of those people who only wants to do power yoga and you just say you can't meditate, it's too hard, I don't like being still, because you haven't actually tapped into prana. There's the missing link there. So for anyone who's familiar with the eight limbs of yoga, or you like yoga, but and you know there's more there, but you're just experiencing asana everywhere, most people don't know enough depth about prana. So they can't actually guide you to experience those deeper levels properly. In my first teacher training, I did not learn anything about prana. I learned about pranayama, and guess how it was described to me? Breath techniques. No one talked to me about what prana was. When I heard prana, I equally heard life force energy, and I went, awesome. Prana is the life force energy of the world. And I'm like, and everyone can talk like that. But how does it actually work? How is it actually written? How is it actually meant to be experienced? It makes so much sense. For me, when I started to learn about it like this, it really bridged the eight limbs of yoga together for me. Because I always thought that the first four limbs of yoga was like, yep, okay. But getting pranayama to turn into pratyahara, that's where I started to get foggy. And like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I'm feeling that properly. Because prana is the bridge in between pranayama and pratyahara. If you haven't tapped into prana, you're simply doing asana and breath work. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm telling you, there's so much more magic there. And prana is something you can literally use to heal the body. It's the spark of life. And you can manipulate it with your mind. You're doing it all the time. All the time you do it. But you don't know you're doing it. So that's why I loved this workshop on Sunday, because we really just had the opportunity to chat and to speak about prana and to figure out how we could use it and how we can understand it. And there was so much aha moments. No wonder why my cup always feels drained, or no wonder why I haven't tapped into pratyahara properly, or no wonder I don't like meditation. It started to make so much sense. So because this workshop was such a success in person, I want to bring it to you online. So if you have a phone or a laptop and a Zoom account, I welcome you to join the Prana workshop. This workshop is going to be on the 1st of August, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., which is Australian time. I've tried to choose a time that works best for most of us. So if you're in Asia, it'll be slightly earlier that morning, around like 5, 6 a.m. And if you're in the US or the UK, I believe that is the last day of July in the evening. I've tried to make it as best I can. There will be a recording, and the recording will be sent out post-workshop. So if you can't make it, you can still book your space, and I will send you the recording. So if it happens to be a dodgy time, I understand Australia's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, so we've got our own like time thing going on. I understand that can be tricky, but check it out, see what it is in your time zone, and let me know. It is a weekend, so it makes it a little bit easier for those of us who might need to have to get up early or have to go to bed late. But it's going to be an incredible workshop where we're going to learn all about prana. We're going to learn how to feel it. We're going to do practices to learn how to direct prana, to feel prana, and to start to understand it. This is going to bridge your yoga practice together. And if you're not interested in practicing yoga, this is going to help you get out of your poor habits, feel like you've got more energy to give, to lift the amount of energy that's in your cup. People say their cup is half empty, it's at the bottom. I don't have anything else to give. This workshop is going to show you how to maintain your energy and to keep yourself thriving, not just surviving, but thriving, because you can thrive. We just got to learn how. And this world is not built right now to help you thrive. We're all just surviving out here. So we've really got to learn how to thrive so we can bring that into our life. Okay, so it is on Zoom. The link will be provided when you book, and you can go to the link in the description of this episode and go and book your place. There will be limited space because I want to be able to talk to you, which I'm really looking forward to, is actually having conversations and speaking to as many of you as possible and doing a Q&A at the end and everything. So if you'd like to hang out for a couple of hours, go and book your space early. We've got about 2 months, a little less than 2 months until the workshop is on. And once it gets to a certain amount of bookings, I'm just going to take it off because I want, as I said, I want to be able to talk to you and I want you to be able to ask questions. So if you're curious, go and check it out. Book your place early. When you book, I'm going to send you an email personally. I'm a one-woman team and I avoid as much automation as possible because I love human connection. So I will send you an email personally with the Zoom link. And if you ever need anything, you have any questions, you can just write back to me on that email. Thank you so much for being here, beautiful soul. If you have a friend that loves yoga or is curious about prana or has said to you the word life force energy before, send them this episode, share it on Instagram stories, and tag me at Madison Mindset. Sorry, that was incorrect. At Madison underscore mindset, so I can go and see it and see that you enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. I wish you a wonderful day. Love.